Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Carlene Spry. I am the awards administrator for the Golden Crown Literary Awards. And I want to welcome you to our first ever Goldie Finalist Spotlight. Now, for those of you who are new to the Golden Crown Literary Society, the GCLS recognizes and rewards quality literary works about women who love women. And we provide learning opportunities, encouragement, and assistance to new and established writers. We have a highly respected writing academy, also an annual gathering of hundreds of readers, writers, publishers, and editors. That's our annual conference, which is coming up this July. We also have a monthly GCLS members only online book club. So we do invite you to learn more about the GCLS and perhaps become a member by visiting our website, goldencrown.org. Now we have just a few housekeeping items before we get started. We'll have some time at the end of the session for some Q&A. We'll try to get to as many questions as possible. So please be sure to use the Zoom Q&A box to submit a question. And if you run into technical issues, please log off, then log back in. That usually resolves most of the issues. Okay, so that does it for the announcements. We are thrilled to have Flashpoint Publications as our sponsor today. So let's take just a bit of time to hear from our sponsor.
At Flashpoint Publications, it is our mission to bring LGBTQIA+ stories to life. In support of the growing multiracial and multi-age coalition of those who demand unbiased treatment and inclusion in all pursuits, we welcome you into our house. We support diversity within our works and welcome novels penned by and for all people. Flashpoint is a proud member of GCLS, and we wish to congratulate all the finalists, including our own authors, Tammy Bird and Kay Aten. We hope to see everyone in person next year.
So we have some great authors today, so let me introduce them. First, we have Missouri Vaun, who will be reading from The Sea Within, which is a finalist in science fiction fantasy. We have Dani Jansen, who will be reading from The Year Shakespeare Ruined My Life, who is a finalist in young adult fiction and debut novel. We have Aurora Rey, reading from Twice Shy, a finalist in contemporary romance, mid-length novels. We have editor Adrian Shanker, who will be reading from Bodies and Barriers, Queer Activists on Health, which is a finalist in nonfiction. And we have Kay Aten reading from The Lost Temple of Psiere, which is also a finalist in science fiction fantasy. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this over to our first reader, Missouri Vaun. Missouri, give us a brief introduction to you, then introduce your reading and share that reading with us.
Thank you for having us on this morning. I'm going to be reading from The Sea Within, which is my 14th novel with bold strokes. And the setting for this book is the near future, and Earth is faced with a climate disaster. The two main characters, Elle and Jackson. Elle's a scientist, Jackson's a military commander. They had a one-night stand thinking they'd never see each other again. And then this is the first conversation they have after they're surprised to discover that they've been assigned to the same mission. Elle stood in the corridor. She looked up as Jackson approached. "I'm glad you found me. I was hoping to speak with you. Do you mind walking to my office? It's a little more private," said Jackson. "Lead the way." It took several minutes to reach Jackson's office, several minutes of painful, electrically charged silence, possibly the longest short walk she'd ever endured. Trying to keep herself in check, all she really wanted to do was sweep Elle up in her arms and kiss her. Was testing her will. She closed the door to her office, but neither of them took a seat right away. "Jackson, I hope you know I'm as surprised to see you as you are to see me." "Look, why don't we sit down?" "Okay. Can we just talk for a minute?" She rotated a second office chair to face Elle's and sat down. Elle was wearing black dress pants and heels. Her ivory blouse was open at the collar, revealing a tempting view of her neck and pronounced collarbones, and that hollow space between them that Jackson wanted to trace with her fingertip. Why was Elle so damn calm? She cleared her throat, rubbed her fingers across the stubble on top of her head briskly a few times, and exhaled. Where to begin? You shouldn't do this. Oh, okay, maybe that wasn't the most subtle way to start the conversation. Shouldn't do what? Elle seemed genuinely confused. This mission. You should walk away from this. It's too hard. You know, we don't know each other very well, but I'm not going to walk away from something just because it's difficult. Elle sounded annoyed. Look, I'm not trying to be patronizing, and I hope it doesn't sound like I am. Jackson paused to regroup. All I'm trying to say is that this is a very dangerous mission, and I don't want to be responsible for your safety. The fact that we have, that there's an attraction between us, well, I think it might compromise the mission. Really? Elle smiled, which annoyed Jackson. This wasn't funny. You can't be serious. Are you saying that you won't be able to control yourself or act in a professional manner if I'm part of the team? Yes. I mean, no, that's not what I'm saying. Elle was getting her all flustered. Hey, look, I can be as professional as you can. Okay, now she sounded like a fifth grader. Fuck, this wasn't going at all as she'd rehearsed it in her head. Okay, let's start over. Okay, I'm listening. Elle ran her tongue across her lips and Jackson tried not to notice. I'm serious. This is serious. Jackson was exasperated. I'm sorry. I'm still trying to get my head around all of this and whether or not any of it could possibly be true, said Elle. I mean, time travel? In this mission briefing, we were having serious conversations about time travel. So forgive me for taking a moment to consider the absurdity of it all. She cocked her head and looked at the ceiling. Although time isn't as linear as we imagine, is it? And it takes more than a second for my brain to process the words you are uttering. So by the time I figure out what you've said, it's no longer now, is it? What? Well, what we think of as the present right now, by the time our brain processes the input, it's no longer the present. Jackson shook her head. Science nerds were so hard to talk to. Elle continued as if she expected Jackson to be keeping up. And here you are. I mean, what are you anyway? What is your role in all this? I'm the mission commander. Oh, and as the mission commander, you're asking me to walk away from possibly the greatest scientific moment of my entire professional career? I simply want you to know what you're getting into. This is dangerous. Oh, and it's okay for you, but not for me? Look, I trained for this. I was in the Air Force. Okay, maybe I haven't gone through basic training or whatever, but you still haven't fully explained why you're so concerned. The slingshot imposes serious, wait, why do you call it the slingshot? What? People keep calling it the slingshot. Oh, Jackson regrouped. Whatever point she had been about to make had gotten completely derailed by Elle's question. The acronym for the ship is SLST, but when you pass through the gateway, it feels like you're being shot into space by a slingshot. And SLST, I don't know. We just started calling it slingshot. Okay, I get it. Listen, what I was trying to explain to you is that traveling through the wormhole imposes serious G-forces. You'll feel like your bones are being crushed, even with the gravity tube to offset the stress on your body. Jackson paused. And then there's the return trip. Jackson, I appreciate your concern, but I've dedicated my life to finding solutions for our current environmental crisis. If there's any glimmer of hope that I can actually affect real transformation by participating in this venture, then there's nothing you can say to dissuade me. Elle was firm, bordering on defiant. What are you saying? I'm saying that you can't tell me not to go and that you shouldn't have even tried. Elle stood to leave. Listen, I appreciate that you probably think you're looking out for me here, Captain, but I can handle myself. That was obvious, and Jackson could tell she'd pissed her off. Elle strode out of her office without looking back. Jackson sat looking at the open door. Now what was she going to do?
Yay, outstanding. Imagine everybody at home yelling, screaming and applauding. Okay, thank you so very much. Let's go ahead and we'll move on to our second reading. And our second reading is from Dani Jansen.
So I am a teacher. I teach drama, which is relevant because the book I'm about to read from is about a school play that goes very, very wrong. To understand the section I'm going to read, you have to know that the main character, Allison, accidentally agreed to go on a date with one of her oldest friends, Jack. She doesn't like guys, so this is a problem. She decides to solve this problem by inviting her best friend, Becca, along on the date and not tell her. Just tell her that they're going out for supper. And Becca has a crush on Jack, the boy who has asked Allison on a date. And that's where we find ourselves. Our food arrived and Jack and Becca dug in, maybe as a way to avoid having to contribute to my fevered analysis of the play. But I felt like I'd struck on something. Maybe I could use the play to help explain what was happening between us. You know, Ms. Merriam is always using Shakespeare's play to, is always saying Shakespeare's plays have survived because they're universal. Maybe she's onto something. I mean, love triangles still happen to this day. People are always falling in love with the wrong person, or they don't notice the right person is right in front of them. I paused to let my deep words sink in, and I decided to reward my fast thinking with an onion ring. As I chewed my onion ring, I looked at Becca. She was glaring at me again. She obviously did not care for this line of conversation. In fact, she was so displeased that I could swear her right eye was twitching a little. I tried to swallow the onion ring, but I was now so nervous that I had no saliva left in my mouth. I couldn't swallow my food. The harder I tried, the worse it got. I felt like I might start choking. So I did the only thing I could think of. I stashed the food in my cheeks like a chipmunk, like a nervous, idiotic chipmunk who thinks it's been planning for the winter, but it turns out it's just been lying to itself and its friends, but it's too late now to do anything about it. Oh, little chipmunk, I really do feel sorry for you. I made sure the onion ring mush was carefully stashed in my cheeks and mumbled, "Excuse me, I have to go to the bathroom." Becca reluctantly let me out of the booth, only after I shoved her a couple times. I sped to the washroom, knowing that I couldn't leave Becca and Jack alone together for long. Becca still seemed to be taking the strong and silent approach with Jack. If he ever got over his funk enough to try to engage in conversation with her, the awkwardness might reach a dangerous level that could threaten any possibility of the two of them ever being in the same room together again. As soon as I got into the washroom, I made a beeline for the paper towel dispenser. I did a quick inspection of the room. There seemed to be someone in a stall, but otherwise I was alone. I grabbed a paper towel and spat the onion ring mush into it, pleased that that one thing had gone right tonight. No one had caught me spitting out my food like some picky toddler. I threw out the paper towel and went to the sink to wash my hands. I leaned on the counter and looked at my reflection in the mirror. The pale girl I saw looked like she'd just been chased by a rabid dog and hadn't quite made it out unscathed. I took a steadying breath and tried to turn on the water to wash my hands. The automatic sensor didn't seem to be working, no matter how close or far away from the tap I moved my hands. I stepped over to the next sink as I heard a toilet flush behind me. The sensor on this one must have been broken as well, because I tried sneaking up on it, then slowly waving my hands back and forth, but nothing worked. With a shake of my head, I moved on to the last sink. Nothing. What were the odds of all the taps in the women's washroom being broken? I was about to warn the woman who'd just exited the toilet stall when she came up beside me and helpfully turned the tap on. I rubbed my soapy hands in the stream of lukewarm water and tilted my head up to look at my savior in the mirror. I wanted to thank her and laugh off my space cadet moment, but the smile froze on my face when I saw just who had witnessed my inability to work a simple faucet. Charlotte was grinning at me as she washed her hands, her eyes crinkled in amusement, her long lashes partly obscuring the blue of her irises. I opened my mouth to say something, but my saliva had dried up again. I couldn't talk. I just stood there, gaping at her like a fish out of water. Charlotte finished washing her hands, grabbed a paper towel, and winked at me as she headed out. I banged my forehead against the mirror and thought this must be some kind of karmic retribution for dragging my best friend along to be a third wheel on my date with her crush. Yep, being humiliated in front of my own crush seemed fair. I turned off the faucet, dried my hands, and followed Charlotte out the door. She was nowhere to be seen as I made my way back to the booth. I scanned every part of the diner, but it was so crowded that it was possible I had missed her. Surely my overwrought mind hadn't just made her up.
Yay! Yay! Wild applause from the crowd. Thank you very much. Thank you. So now let's move on to Aurora Rey.
Thanks so much. I'm Aurora Rey. I am a college administrator by day and a lesbian romance writer and would-be homesteader the rest of the time. Today I'm going to be reading from Twice Shy, which is the story of two middle-aged women who are both divorced, who are sort of dipping their toe back in the water in terms of relationships. They've been working together, and this is their first real date, or the end of it. So that's what I'm going to be reading from today. They settled on a bottle of wine and a couple of plates to share. As always, the service was efficient and unobtrusive. The food, an arugula salad with strawberries and blue cheese, a zucchini and pine nut flatbread, and gnocchi with garlic skate pesto, was outstanding. Drew Davis, the chef, made a round of the dining room and stopped by their table. It was the kind of personal touch she appreciated. Although Amanda resisted at first, Quinn talked her into sharing dessert. I know you're a snob when it comes to cake, so thank you for making an exception. I am, but the pastry chef here never disappoints. Ah, so you were resisting on principle. It felt like perhaps they were talking about more than dessert. Maybe. I respect that. She did too, but I'd be lying if I said I wasn't glad you can be persuaded sometimes. Amanda's smile was slow, sometimes. On the walk from the restaurant to her car, she gave in to the urge to take Amanda's hand. Not too forward, familiar. And it was nice to have the urge again, just like the urge to kiss her. From the moment she opened the passenger door for Amanda to the moment she pulled into Amanda's driveway, all Quinn could think about was kissing her. Not whether or not she wanted to. No, the want was coming in loud and clear. The problem was, for as many dates as she'd been on in the last year, she was rusty at this part. She wasn't the most take-charge person to begin with. Not that she couldn't take charge when the moment called for it. She just preferred being cautious to screwing up. But sometimes being cautious was the screw up. I had a nice time. Amanda tucked a piece of hair behind her ear. I did too. Quinn stood there feeling as nervous as a teenager and hoping to God it wasn't evident on her face. Does this mean I get to make you dinner again? The tiny gift of encouragement did wonders to calm Quinn's racing mind. Her pulse was another matter, but that wasn't necessarily a bad thing. I don't think I'll ever say no to a meal with you. You cooking it would be an extra layer of awesome. Extra layer of awesome? Where the hell did that come from? Amanda smirked slightly, but didn't seem put off by the cheesiness of the line. Something tells me you're easy to impress. Nah, I just know what I like. Not the best line, but it made up for extra layer of awesome, at least a little. Good to know. Amanda nodded. So she trailed off, but didn't make any move to go inside or unlock the door. Funny how so much could be conveyed in so little sometimes. It provided just the right amount of encouragement. She looked from Amanda's eyes down to her mouth and back, her own version of saying so much with so little. The smirk vanished and Amanda's lips parted slightly. If the so was encouragement, that definitely counted as invitation. Quinn leaned in, pausing just long enough to give Amanda an out if she wanted it. Instead of backing away, she mirrored the gesture, making the distance between them even smaller. Barely an inch separated their mouths now. The smell of Amanda's perfume invaded her senses and addled her brain. But even through the haze, the wanting remained. It would be silly to say she'd forgotten what it felt like, but in a way she had. To be reminded, to remember, standing in the porch light with this beautiful and interesting woman felt a bit like magic. She pressed her lips to Amanda's, softly at first, gently. She wanted to give herself a moment to acclimate as much as she wanted to give that to Amanda. But then Amanda sighed, a sound so soft and so feminine. It sent Quinn's already racing pulse skittering, and she was done. She brought a hand to Amanda's neck, let her finger slide into Amanda's hair. It was thick and soft and made her want to wrap herself up in it. Amanda grasped Quinn's arm, her grip stronger than Quinn would have guessed. The idea of Amanda being stronger than she looked made her smile. She slid her other hand to the small of Amanda's back and pulled them closer. Not that there was much space left between them, but the shift brought their entire bodies together. Amanda's breasts pressing into her made her entire body hum. For someone on the fence about asking for a kiss, she was awfully close to asking for a lot more. The realization pierced through the haze of her mind and made her pull back. Amanda's eyes fluttered open. I think we should do that again. Quinn merely nodded. The kiss was more purposeful this time, less of a question and hotter. The slide of Amanda's tongue against hers cranked up the heat factor tenfold. When they finally stopped, she felt lightheaded, out of breath. Amanda didn't let go of her arm, definitely a good sign. She tried to fill her lungs with oxygen to steady herself. Wow. Amanda smiled. Yeah, I really hope we can do this again. Amanda's eyes, already dark with desire, danced with humor. Dinner or making out on my front porch? Thank you.
Woo, yay, yay. Thank you very much. Let's move on to our next reading. This is from Adrian Shanker.
Hi, so nice to be here with you all today. I'm Adrian Shanker. I'm the editor of Bodies and Barriers, Queer Activists on Health, which is published by PM Press. And by way of access, I'm a white man with a black shirt sitting in front of plants. Bodies and Barriers features writing by 26 queer activists from around the world who share our experiences accessing healthcare. The foreword to the book was written by Dr. Rachel Levine, who's currently President Biden's Assistant Secretary of Health, and the afterword was written by Kate Kendall, who formerly led the National Center for Lesbian Rights. Many of the chapters explore health challenges experienced by lesbian, bisexual, and queer women. I'll start with an excerpt from Liz Margulies, founder of the National LGBT Cancer Network. Liz writes, I don't have cancer. So far, that's a good thing. But over a 10-year period, I accompanied 4 queer women to the edge of the cancer cliff and watched them all tumble over it and die. These were not just 4 people I knew and lost. They were 4 of my favorite people on this planet. Adria, Ruth, Joe, and Shirley all died of ovarian cancer in their 50s. During that same decade, 3 other friends were treated for breast cancer. What are the odds of this? Slim, I would have thought. But it turns out that this massive loss is not the product of bum luck or a poor choice of friends on my part. This is what health disparities look like in real life. When I was forced to understand this by falling face first into my grief and rage, I set out to tell the world. I was in my 50s too. Please don't pull out that inaccurate trope that cancer doesn't discriminate. I've heard it way too many times. I've lost patience with explaining, yes, rogue cells are rogue cells, but we can't tease out the lives of errant cells from the social conditions in which the whole body lives. The stress and stigma of being a sexual or gender minority in this culture absolutely contributes to poorer health and increased cancer risks for LGBTQ people. I wonder sometimes what it will be like for me to have cancer. Will all my professional work and research serve to make my cancer experience less stressful? Is forewarned, forearmed? Will I be bolder in my demands for the respect and care I want from both my providers and the healthcare system? What if I'm forced to choose, as many are, between using the best doctor, who's an asshole, or the young, less experienced queer doctor? What will I do? Most probably, like everyone else, I'll wing it, I'll bumble, I'll cry, I'll be afraid. I'll forge on. One way or another, I'll lean on my friends for support. I'll be tired, I'll be angry. I'll experience cancer like I experienced the world, as a woman, as queer, and as white. My experience will be gendered, and my experience will be mine. The next quick excerpt is from bisexual activist Robin Oakes, who writes, in my 20s, during an annual checkup with a new primary care physician, we had the following conversation. The physician asked, are you sexually active? And I responded, yes. The physician asked, what kind of birth control do you use? At the time, I was in a monogamous relationship with a woman. I wanted to reply flippantly, we use the lesbian method, but I wasn't that brave. I hemmed and hawed and squirmed uncomfortably and finally managed to state that my partner is a woman. It was awkward and uncomfortable. A couple of years later, that relationship had ended and I was in a new relationship with a man. I suspected there was a note in my chart saying I was a lesbian, and I finally awkwardly told my doctor I'm bisexual and got fitted for a diaphragm. I'll close with an excerpt from the afterword of the book by Kate Kendall. Throughout my career, I've been involved with some of the LGBT movement's greatest fights: marriage equality, non-discrimination in the workplace, parenting rights, inclusion in sports, ending conversion therapy, protecting youth, elders, and LGBT families. The common thread that links all these issues is health and well-being. It's not possible to be a healthy, vital person if you're under assault for who you are. Precisely because so many LGBT people struggle with stigma, safety, acceptance, and belonging, many in our community still struggle with high rates of mental and physical health challenges. Despite the odds, our movement for LGBT liberation has come far. In my 22 years leading the National Center for Lesbian Rights, I had a front row seat to our national progress. Out of nothing and in the face of hostility from our own government, we built the HIV/AIDS infrastructure in the 80s to fight back and save our men and everyone impacted by the pandemic. When I started at the National Center for Lesbian Rights in the 90s, LGBT parents routinely lost custody of their children as they came out of heterosexual marriages. Now, sexual orientation is not a basis for losing custody. In the early 2000s, many openly wondered if we should fight for the freedom to marry or if such a fight would be successful in their lifetimes. In 2015, we won marriage nationwide at the Supreme Court. We've come a long way from the time when LGBT people were dying left and right from a treatable virus to witnessing some early AIDS activists marrying their longtime partners. But the LGBT community still experiences open hostility and disregard from healthcare professionals, from obstetricians refusing to treat lesbians to gay men being ridiculed for wanting a prescription for PrEP. Healthcare professionals can do better, policymakers can do better, and all of us can do better. Our movement for equality, for liberation has been breathtaking in its gains, but we still fight for our humanity, our health, and our happiness. The priority for the next generation must be the health of every one of us and the promise of a long, healthy, and fully embraced life. Thank you so much to Golden Crown. It's a pleasure to be with you all today.
Yay, excellent. Thank you so much, Adrian. So appreciative. So let's go ahead and listen to Kay Aten.
Hi there. I'm Kelly Aten, and my finalist is the 12th novel, and it's my 12th novel and the second in the Mystery of Maker series, which was born of my inability to pick a lane. Themes include science fiction, steampunk, royal romance, aliens, Indiana Jones style action adventure with mental powers and mythical beasts thrown in for good measure. The excerpt is from chapter 14 when they're traveling across a mysterious Isle of Magna in the search of the lost temple of Antaeus. Specialist Devon's deep voice made him seem older than his 23 rotos. I just wish there was something to break the monotony. His wish was interrupted by the now familiar alert tone on their boteos. Unfortunately for the team, their current location was in the midst of heavily forested rolling hills. The railer line cut through the landscape like a scar, heading steadily upward, exposing striated rock that had worn with time. The trees in the forest were as massive as only hundreds of rotos untamed could make them, though they were nowhere near the monumental size of the ones on Mater. Some of the trees grew close enough to the tracks that their branches rubbed along the top of the passenger segment as they traveled beneath the canopy. It was the proximity of the forest proper to the railer that set Castellan on edge with the imminent repair ahead of them. She pointed at Devon. "Be careful what you wish for, specialist." With those words of warning, she led the way off the railer to deal with the next obstruction. Olivienne gave a sigh of relief when she saw the issue. Well, that's the luckiest thing we've seen all morning. A large tree had fallen across the railer track, preventing forward motion until it was moved. It was an easy enough task for a 7-rated telekinetic, but something about the scene set Castellan's intuition jangling. She glanced around. "Madeline, Hodling, are you picking up any of those skunk apes nearby?" "Yes, sir, I am." The replies only made her intuition clamor more, especially when Lear spoke up. "Something feels off, sir." Dozier was quick to agree. Both had a 4 rating intuition, and Castellan drew her service pistol. The rest of the team quickly followed suit and assumed the familiar formation of protection around Olivienne. "I want everyone back on the railer. We need to go as soon as I move this tree. I don't know how smart these beasts are, but this feels like a trap to me." Vaun pointed out the obvious. "Sir, what happens if the track is damaged on the other side?" "Then we'll have a problem on our hands." "All right, everyone, load up. Man the rail guns we installed on each side of the car just in case. Lear, cycle the engine and stand by." Castellan strode to the front of the engine to assess the massive downed tree, while the team loaded onto the railer. Vaun had held back and called to his commander to get her attention. He pointed toward where the trunk was snapped off at the base, some distance from the line. "Sir, I think you were right about the trap. That tree is healthy and the break looks fresh. This was no accident of age or weather." "I agree. I want to walk down the line a bit and investigate, and since you're here, you can watch my back." Vaun grinned, proud at having his commander's trust. "Yes, sir." Utilizing her channel, Castellan made quick work of the tree. She lifted it well clear of the tracks before walking forward and moving it away from the railer. Nearly 100 yards down the line, Castellan hadn't seen any other signs of malfeasance. She judged the distance far enough and turned the great tree parallel to the railer line and set it on the ground off to the side. The branches prevented it from rolling onto the other trunks at the edge of the forest. Vaun walked behind her the entire way, guarding her back as requested. She turned to him and grinned, but noticed her lieutenant had a peculiar look upon his face. "Vaun, what is it?" "Do you smell something, Commander?" She tilted her head curiously at him. "I smell nothing but trees. Are you feeling well?" Her words ended as soon as the wretched odor hit her nose. "By the makers, what is that?" A reverberating crack sounded through the forest, and before either of them could pinpoint the location, something slammed into the side of the railer segment. Tosh and Savan spun toward the railer in time to see a tree trunk hit the ground and roll away from the line. Rather than waste time with the Voteo, Castellan contacted Madeline directly as her and Savan ran toward the trailer. Lear, full speed ahead. We'll catch you on the way by. Madeline, report. The railer gave off a massive chuff of aether and started forward, rapidly picking up speed. Sir, we see nothing. It's like that tree came out of nowhere, but I'm picking up a massive amount of greater beast activity with my animal empathy. Another crack sounded, sex, before a smaller tree trunk slammed into the opposite side of the seg. Tosh? Olivian's voice mentally was like cold water down Castellan's spine. When the railer was upon them, Tosh telekinetically lifted Savan and stuffed him through the seg door, then boosted herself after him. Tosh yelled at Lear once they were in. Keep it steady, Lear. Despite their movement, the segment rocked again when another tree hit the side. The force was so great that it cracked the plexi window near the back. Sheditch! Hoping to see what they were up against, Castellan ran for the back of the seg. She exited onto the small observation platform and watched in awe as creature after creature emerged from the forest to stand on the railer line. Using the width of the rails as reference, she calculated the size of the skunk apes to be roughly 1.5 times her own height. And clearly they were exponentially stronger in both odor and physical manifestation. Thank you.
Yay! Excellent. Okay, let's go ahead and have everybody come back on. Let's turn our videos back on. I'll even be weird and turn mine on. Okay, excellent. Guys, that was so outstanding. Thank you so much. You guys were the first, the very, very first. So thank you so much for signing up for today. Missouri, thank you so much for getting out of bed early today. I appreciate that. Again, audience members, if you have questions, go ahead and throw them into the Q&A. We do have some time remaining. That was me looking at my clock. We do have some time remaining, so let's go ahead and go ahead and ask those questions if you have them. In the meantime, I've got some questions for you guys. Okay, and so we're just going to go round robin on these. These are kind of quick questions. Shouldn't take a whole heck of a lot of thinking. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and start with, for fun, we're going to start with Adrian. So Adrian, if your book had a theme song, what would it be?
Theme song. That's very Ally McBeal. It would probably be Closer to Fine, because I feel like the entire theme of this book is LGBTQ people speaking up and creating a world that was not really created for us. And if anybody creates that world for me, it's the Indigo Girls. So I think that would probably be the theme song here.
Excellent, excellent. Missouri, how about you? If your book had a theme song, what would it be?
Oh God, I did not prepare for that question.
I know.
I don't know. I don't have an answer. Sorry.
Okay.
I was actually, when Adrian was talking, I was thinking, oh my God, I just recently replayed Closer to Fun 3 times in my Facebook feed. And that's what I was thinking when you asked me that question. So I'm sorry, my mind is blank.
Okay. Well, we'll go on. If you come up with something, jump in. We'll let you know.
All right.
Aurora, your turn. If you had a theme song.
Yeah, I'm with Missouri. That's not an easy question. I mean, I could probably go with a really, really good answer if I had time, but of course my mind is now blanking on every song ever written. Okay. So I'm going to cheat, and I'll say that there's a theme movie for this book, which is It's Complicated, which is one of my favorite movies. So much bakery and garden porn, and Meryl Streep, who you can't go wrong there. Right. And that sort of story inspired at least kind of the premise of Twice Shy. So a bit of a cheat, but one I can answer. Okay, I can go with that. Dani, do you have an answer for us if you had a theme song?
Yeah, so I have a 4-year-old. So all songs in my life are pretty horrific right now, but it would be the Bob the Builder theme song, which is can we build it? Yes, we can. And that's Allison's Like despite everything that just keeps going wrong in the play, she's just like, we can still do this despite, you know, the one of the leads quitting towards the end, you know. Yeah. Can we build it? Yes, we can.
Okay, excellent. Kelly, how about you? You got an answer for this one?
I actually do. Sometimes when I write my books, I used to, you know, when I commuted for work, drive back and forth, and I'd hear a lot of songs on Pandora. I'd listen to weird stations like the Metric station, which is a band. Anyway, it's 3 songs actually came up, and sometimes when I have this, I'll like make a list of songs that like really fit my books. Not always, just some books. And this one I had 3 songs. I had Casualty by Hidden Citizens, Carry You by Ruel, and Whose Side Are You On by Ruel. And they all kind of fit the theme of this book. So.
Okay, all right. Someone had a playlist. Okay, so now we're going to go back to Missouri.
In the hot seat. Hopefully this is a question I can answer.
You know what? You should be able to answer this one. I really do think so. Roller skates or rollerblades?
Oh my God, you're killing me, man. Roller skates.
Okay. Roller skates or skateboard?
Skateboard.
Okay, okay. Adrian, how about you? Roller skates or rollerblades?
Oh, I'm an indoors guy. Yeah.
None of the above.
None of the above.
That's the potted plant scape behind you.
Right.
That speaks volumes.
Yep.
But it does give the illusion of outdoorsy, though. Dani, roller skates, rollerblades?
No. I briefly thought I was going to learn to roller skate because I love roller derby, but I am a klutz. That would not be good. And so also no to the skateboard.
Okay. Kelly, you have a choice there?
So when I was in my 20s, I rollerbladed a lot. However, when I hit my 30s, I actually got convinced to join a roller derby team, even though I couldn't roller skate. So I actually played roller derby for a few years until I broke myself too much. And so I'd have to say roller skates for sure. I can do a lot of things on them if my knees weren't destroyed now that I could never do on rollerblades.
Any thoughts about a skateboard?
I have only been on a skateboard a couple times years ago, and definitely roller skates still because of my derby thing.
Okay. Aurora.
Yeah, I actually own a pair of white roller skates with hot pink wheels, just like the ones I had when I was a kid.
Nice.
And have sort of rediscovered roller skating. I am very impressed. I wanted to do roller derby, but I'm way too much of a powder puff. So I've decided my goal is to be one of the refs who I can just skate around the middle doing this, which is like seems really fun. Yeah. So yes. And the one time I was on a skateboard, I fell and I'm pretty sure did something really nasty and permanent to my tailbone. So I'll nix that. All roller skates all the time.
No to that. Okay. So Dani, let's start with you on this next question. This one will be a little less random, just so you know. What was your inspiration for writing this particular book? Where did it come from?
I've seen my share of disasters in the school plays. There's something about a bunch of teenagers trying to put together a school play that leads to the best bonding, and that's probably because so much goes wrong. And when I was in high school, I did kind of get tricked into producing my school play, which is what happens to the protagonist of my book. And then also just watching my perfectionist students just drive themselves crazy trying to do everything right.
Okay, excellent. Aurora, how about you? Your inspiration for this particular book?
Yeah, I mean, I sort of mentioned the movie, but I think I'm sort of at a point in life where I find myself thinking a lot about what does it mean to sort of fall in love again after you've had a really long-term relationship that you kind of thought was going to last forever. And sort of what are the pros and cons of that and what does it look like? And, you know, I have not had ill-advised affairs with exes in the process of wading back into those waters, but I've had some consideration. So I'll just say that.
Okay, okay, all right. Adrian, what was your inspiration for collecting these fabulous essays and stories from folks and putting this book together?
Yeah, I had a negative experience with a doctor, and I'm a full-time queer activist who, is used to being able to advocate for myself in healthcare spaces. My mom has pre-skin cancer, and I made an appointment for a dermatologist to get a baseline screening. And at every minute from the moment I walked into that clinic until the minute I left, I felt that the care they were providing just wasn't care for queer people like me. And I started talking to a number of friends who had so many different experiences, from transmasculine people in gynecology settings to lesbians and having negative experiences with fertility care. And I decided there really needs to be a book that compiles these stories.
Okay, excellent. And just off-topic question: did I hear that right? That was Kate Shindle?
Kate Kendall, who was
Kendall.
the leader of National Center for Lesbian Rights for more than 2 decades. Yeah.
Okay, excellent, excellent. Missouri, how about you? Inspiration for this book, where did it come from?
It came from my interest in climate science and climate change and sort of the condition of our oceans. One of the main characters in the book is the sea, which that's what the title came from, The Sea Within. And it's funny when if you research a book like this, a lot of the actual scientific fact starts to sound like science fiction, but it's actually where we are and what we should be sort of paying attention to right now. So I don't know. It's a weird time to write climate fiction because it almost sounds like science fiction, but unfortunately it's not. So anyway, that was the inspiration for this book.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. And Kelly.
So, when you write a book, sometimes you don't know that the story is going to be longer than that book, which was the case with my first series that I wrote, The Amazons. And I actually wasn't going to publish anything. I didn't realize I was a writer. And but going into this particular idea, I think I mentioned that it was born of my inability to stay in a lane. The problem is, as a reader and a writer, like I'll read something like, oh, I just read like 2 amazing steampunk novels. I want to write a steampunk novel. And then I read a superhero novel and I wanted to write that. And then I read a novel with like mental powers and I wanted to write that. And so this was actually kind of an ambitious undertaking, this series. I just threw everything into one book. And then I realized, when I was writing that first book, I'm like, there's no way I can tell this entire story, the Mystery of the Makers story, like beginning to ending, and sufficiently wrap it up and give everything I need to give when you build a world like this in one book. So I knew starting that it was going to be a 3-book series in order to tell this whole story. So this book was the natural continuation of the first one, where they're getting closer. At the end of the first book, they find the keys and the location of the lost temple. So of course, naturally, I had to write about this lost temple. But ultimately, it's called the Mystery of the Makers series. So there's yet another book.
Okay, excellent, excellent. Again, if anybody out there has questions, go ahead and put them in the Q&A. Don't make me be the only one, nitpicking at these people, because I will nitpick. I'm good at nitpicking. Aurora, did you just roll your eyes at me? Okay. Okay, another quick question. Don't think about it, okay? Don't think about it. Dani, we're going to start with you. Coffee or tea?
Tea.
Tea or tequila?
Tea.
Aurora, coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Coffee or tequila?
What time of day?
Okay, so we'll just call that a toss-up. We'll just say it.
It's a both and situation.
Sure. It's all situational. Missouri, how about you? Coffee or tea?
Always coffee, pretty much all day long.
Okay. Coffee or tequila?
Even now. Actually, it would be a hard cider, I think, instead of tequila. I only had tequila once, and it was a really funny experience. And I was with a friend and she's like, if you never had tequila, you should have tequila. And I was like, I don't know. So I had one shot and I was like, I don't know. It's great, but I don't feel anything. And then I had another shot and I was like, I don't know. I mean, what's the big deal? I don't feel anything. You know where that ended up. I knocked a piece of my car off driving back to the hotel.
Oh dear. Oh dear, 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 dear.
Yeah, tequila kind of sneaks up on you.
That it does. That it does. Adrian, coffee or tea?
I'm pretty snobby about my teas. I like really nice teas. So I would go with tea and it would still be tea in the second question.
Okay, excellent. Kelly, coffee or tea?
Chai and never coffee, never tequila. I'm not saying I haven't had tequila. It's just nasty. So hard cider would be a good one. Good job on that, Missouri. But definitely chai. No standard tea. I don't like it. And I hate coffee.
Okay, excellent, excellent. So we do have a question from our audience. And the question is, and Kelly, we're going to start with you. Where do you do your best writing? And place this in two places, pre-pandemic and now. So where do you do your best writing?
Pre-pandemic, honestly, I got into this habit. On Wednesdays, we would have a writer group at this coffee shop, kind of local. And I would go, and sometimes I would just, I'd get the sandwiches because I love them. And I would churn out, sitting at this coffee shop with all this noise and bustle around, I would churn out like 5,000-6,000 words easy in an hour or two. It was crazy. And I don't know why, because I don't like a lot of noise around me when I'm writing at home, but mostly it's because my family, I just don't like to hear them. So they're all loud. The wife and the kids are all loud. But now, like, I've put a lot of work, now that I'm working from home for like the last 14 months, I've put a lot of work into completely redoing this office down here. So it's like my space. And so obviously this is my preferred space because there are no other spaces now. But even so, post-pandemic, I've definitely struggled finding, I'm just distracted by everything in the world right now. So it's really difficult, but definitely this space now. But I think once things open up and I feel safe and I start going back to the coffee shop, I'm hoping that I'll get some of that inspiration back.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Missouri, how about you?
I have this backyard shed studio that I'm in right now. And it's sort of my little fortress, tiny fortress of solitude. And I actually wrote here before the pandemic and have been writing here now. But what I've discovered is that my day job has sort of infiltrated my quiet writing space. I think that's the hardest thing during the pandemic, is to set clean boundaries between the day job and the other job, which is, you know, writing books. But anyway, yeah, this is my little workspace.
Okay. Dani?
Pre-pandemic, a quiet house if no one is here. During pandemic, whenever I can find the energy and time, yeah, teaching in a 4-year-old is busy making.
I bet. Adrian, how about you?
I'll answer as an editor. So I do my best editing when I'm far away from people in different time zones and in a fairly remote place. I edited Bodies and Barriers during a sabbatical for my job. I really can't get distracted when I'm editing, or it doesn't get edited very well. And during the pandemic, I'm working on another book, and I'm trying to do it in my apartment, and it's a lot harder because of all the distractions.
All those plants bothering you? Okay, and Aurora?
Yeah, I mean, I think both pre and post pandemic, 3/4 of my writing happens at my kitchen island in like the hour before my day job. It was a sort of writing habit I got into, and has been a little harder to maintain since the pandemic, but it's where I get most of it done. I really do, though, miss writing like in cafes and coffee shops. Airports are some of the best places to write. It's that sort of anonymity and the white noise. I will say, if you're a coffee shop person and you haven't, I'm a huge fan of the Coffeetivity app. It's like a little app that you get on your phone, and it mimics the background noise of being in a cafe. It's like dishes and voices, but everything's muffled. You can't make anything out, but it's if you close your eyes, you can almost pretend you're out in public.
Okay. Yeah, that brings me, I'm segueing here. Back in the day, I used to do some of my own writing, and I used to have to commute from home to downtown Chicago. So I'd take the train, and I had like an hour ride there and an hour ride back. And so I would write longhand, right? I'd write longhand, and then when I got home, type it into the computer and edit as I was doing that. So that kind of segues me into my next question for you, which is, does anybody write longhand or had experience writing longhand? Like, what do you prefer? Nobody writes on. Okay. Do you just write and then go back and edit, or do you edit as you write?
I sort of put the whole story down, like almost like a solid first draft. I don't even put chapter breaks in. I like to just get the whole narrative down, right? And then go back and do edits and add chapters and maybe move things around. And I do keep a notebook where I jot down a lot of like thoughts I don't want to forget, but they're not complete scenes, you know. So yeah, I do keep like one notebook for each story, and in it there's like, oh, that's interesting, oh, that's an interesting fact, like, you know, because you come across something throughout your day, you're not always at your writing desk, and so you capture it so you don't lose it. One time I was on a trip and I had a whole pocket full of very important notes that I didn't want to lose, and I was traveling for work, and I sent them out with my laundry, and the nice hotel person put everything in a Ziploc bag and gave it back to me, but it was all just pieces of paper and I couldn't read any of it. So I don't do that anymore. That was pretty much a missed opportunity, but yeah, anyway, notebooks that aren't going to go through the laundry, I recommend.
Okay. Kelly, how about you?
I don't write longhand. I try never to write by hand. Everything is typing. I'm significantly faster. I do keep notes. I write everything. I write chapter by chapter. I'm mostly pantsy, but I have to do, I'm a pantser and a plotter. So I'll pants until I have to plot, because I do a lot of world building. Any spec fic person kind of understands that. I do a lot of research. So I actually keep all my notes on Google Sheets, and I have a tab for different categories of things. And if I get an idea for a scene, I'll quickly like put it in those notes. So get down. Sorry, cat. But yeah, I write everything. I don't ever type or handwrite anything, because I would never read it again, ever. It might as well go through the laundry. I wouldn't read it.
Okay. Adrian, how about you? Do you like kind of do things all at once and then go back and?
I do it all at once and then I go back and edit it down. I like to get all my thoughts on paper before starting to try to fit it into a word count.
Okay. Dani?
I think I edit mostly as I go. There's often big breaks between being able to write for me. So if I don't read back what I've written, I forget what I've done half the time. So I read, and I just by nature of reading it, I start editing. So yeah.
Okay. And Aurora, you need to answer this one, right?
Yeah, I mean, I try not to edit as I go, because I think I could get caught up in the editing and not actually make forward progress in the story. So I try to make myself just keep writing. I do write out of order, which poses some interesting challenges. It's nice because if you get stuck, you just move on to something else, but there's a lot of cleanup to be done with timeline and things like that.
Okay, all right. We do have some more questions from the audience, which is kind of awesome, and they keep going away. Do you have a support system? This goes to, meaning, do you have someone that will help you by listening to your brainstorming or brainstorming with you or beta reading, or do you just kind of go, I'm alone on an island? Dani, let's start with you.
Yeah, I think everyone needs support systems. You know, friends who read, because I work mostly with young adult and middle grade stories, I use my students and former students, and they've been very nice to read, and also they are pretty brutally honest, so they're helpful if I'm up for the feedback.
Okay, excellent. Kelly, how about you? Do you tend to have brainstorming people, or are you alone on an island?
I used to have a beta reader who was great for like pinging ideas, and he actually beta read almost all of my books. But he's not my beta reader anymore. Just didn't have time anymore. So I don't have a beta reader now, but the last book that I just finished writing, it comes out in September. I actually, I got stuck. Sometimes you need somebody to like bounce ideas off of in order to go forward. And so I sent what I had. It was like 80,000 words. So props to my publisher, actually, Patty Schramm. I sent it to her and she read through it. And then we did a Zoom meeting, and just kind of like, she let me ping ideas and threw out like, what about this? And I plotted out the rest of my book, and there was that. So I will say that having somebody to be your support system like that, who sometimes you just get stuck and you need to ping ideas off of, it's so important, because we're not alone on an island, even though, the majority of the ideas come from us and we put it together. Sometimes it's nice just to have that little bit of support. So.
Okay, all right. Missouri?
All right, I couldn't find my mute button. Yeah, I rely a lot on my beta readers. I have a core group of beta readers that have I've worked with on all my books, and they're avid readers, which I think helps because they can give context to your story, or I don't know, they have a wide range of opinions. So I think that's helpful. I have a really, really good editor also, Cindy Crest, who occasionally, if I get really stuck, I can ask her, but I try not to bother her because I know she's really busy. And my wife, actually, who's she's a really great beta reader. I usually give her the finished piece, and then she helps me sort of refine certain scenes, which is great. Dialogue, things like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Adrian?
I read a lot of my stuff out loud, usually to myself, to make sure it sounds right. But sometimes I'll also call a friend and ask if I can read a couple paragraphs to them and make sure that it sounds right, both in terms of like flow, but also because I'm dealing with nonfiction content, and making sure that the tone is appropriate for that moment.
And Aurora, I think you haven't answered this one, right?
No, I do. I think having a community is really important. I think, sort of beta readers sort of is almost like a pre-editing is great, but just having a community of other writers is lovely, because you can brainstorm and bounce ideas, and someone who's not quite as in the weeds as you are can sometimes bring really fresh perspective. And I think that's where I would put in a little bit of a plug for GCLS, because it's a great place to connect and find community with writers, whether they're in your genre or not. Some of my, what I consider close friends, I'm finishing a collaboration with Jamie Clemenger, who I met at a GCLS conference, and we've written 2 books together now. So I think, for people out there who are thinking about writing or writing and floundering, if you're not part of a writing group or an organization like GCLS, like, join it. You'll find your people.
Excellent. Thank you. Go GCLS. Did I catch everybody on that one? I think I did. Okay. Excellent. So speaking of editors, what has an editor done for or to your books that has been significant? And Aurora, I'm coming right back to you just because I feel feisty.
I haven't had major wholesale changes to my stories. I think one of the biggest things an editor does is they help you sort of refine your voice. I tend to be a sucker for overly complicated sentence structure, and my editor tries to beat it out of me. But I do think, especially with my first novel, I like sort of happy feel good. I tend to write kind of fluffy, frothy romances, because that's what I like to read. I just sort of like it to feel good. And so conflict is something that I've had to really work hard to develop. And my very first book, my editor was like, yeah, these are like some very minor misunderstandings. That doesn't count as like meaningful emotional conflict. And so that was sort of a big sort of arc to make them suffer a little bit.
Okay, all right. Well, let's go ahead and throw this one to the editor in our midst.
Yeah, so while I'm listed as the editor of Bodies and Barriers, in many ways, I'm more of a curator of stories and content. The editor that worked with me at PM Press was a copy editor, and I'll never forget the moment when he sent me 71,000 track changes to a book with 75,000 words, and I was told I had 4 days to respond. But really, it was amazing edits. It was putting it into a style guide that really provided consistency, especially when you have 26 authors with different writing styles and different countries and different cultural norms and also different identities, different language. So I think copy editors are brilliant because I don't have that kind of grammatical skill set to really know how to think like that.
Great. Dani, how about you? Did your editor shake you up?
Yeah, we mostly super helpful edits, but we had a few disagreements on what was realistic in high school. A lot of the points that she felt were unrealistic, I was like, that's based on something that actually happened. And especially plays, like the things that happen are ridiculous. You seem to like, it seems impossible that this could happen, but it has. So we'd go back and forth on, like, okay, but just because something could happen in real life, does that mean that it'll feel real to a reader? So those were some interesting discussions. And she also hated the word cafetorium, which in my high school was a real place. Like it was the auditorium and cafe together, and it was awful, the cafeteria. But she just hated the sound of it. And I'm like, oh, but that's what it is. So these were the like conversations. So I feel pretty lucky that those are the kind of arguments we had, not even arguments, but the disagreements we had were over how realistic some things were and the sound of the word cafetorium. Otherwise, super helpful points about characters and ending, like how is it satisfying enough, especially for a YA audience.
Okay, all right. Kelly.
I've only been writing for like a handful of years. I didn't know I could write before. It was kind of an accident, but I've been publishing for 3 years now, and I've had a couple different editors. One mostly through all of my books, Michaela, and Michaela is very smart about like historical, about the English language structure, all that. I'm crap at editing, but one thing that Michaela has shown me is to be more concise with what I'm saying, to cut out superfluous things that aren't necessary for the story. And as a writer, like you write this and you're like, oh, you're taking that away, but like, oh, it's every bit is so important to you. But then you realize, like, and as it goes along, I've clearly, like old dogs, new tricks, I'm clearly picking up on the stuff that she's laying down, and my own writing has gotten cleaner as a result. I wouldn't say she's done like removed stuff or done something specific that is significant to any of my novels. I usually don't get much cut out at all, but she has definitely helped me refine my craft as far as just being clean, being concise. And the thing that I actually kind of like is that every new book, the first pass that she sends me, she'll send me a letter about her impression of the book, and she'll use like, this is your most overused word of the novel, and every one is a different, I kind of rotate through a couple overused words, and so it's just kind of funny. It's like, oh crap, I gotta watch for that on the next one, and then the next one will be a different overused word, and then she'll point out the things that she really liked. So it's that positivity sandwich. It's like, I like this, you need to work more on this, and then to wrap up something more positive. And it just really it's nice to have that kind of support in your editor, and it helps you take the criticisms of the things that you need to work on a little bit better. So
okay, and I think Missouri, this is one you need to answer.
I didn't answer yet, but I mentioned my I mentioned my editor earlier. I was just going to say that I was writing a different kind of book before I started working with Bold Strokes. I was doing graphic novels in which everyone gets a point of view, right? Everyone who's speaking has a point of view in a graphic novel, and that's not the case in a novel. And so I credit my editor, Cindy, with helping me really just improve my craft in general for writing long form narratives. Totally different ball game. I feel like I had almost like a college level course from her. So I can't say enough nice things about her.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, so sorry to the questions we're not going to be able to get to. However, we do want to know, what are you working on now? What's next in the pipeline? So let's just go around the circle. So Kelly, we'll start with you.
I actually typed it in the chat, but I can cover it again real fast. I'm working on the third novel for this same series that my finalist is in, the Mystery of the Maker series. Obviously, there's a lead up to where they're at the end of the second book, and to go forward for the third book. And so that's what I'm currently writing right now. My next book to publish will be Elemental Attraction, which is my first attempt at fantasy. It's also the most hilarious book I have ever written in my life. So that's my goal, is to make people laugh with this book. It's always been to make people think, feel, or discuss after they read one of my books. But this one is to make people laugh. And I think, honestly, like, I have certain books that are my favorites. This one might be my favorite or second favorite. So hopefully people will enjoy it when it comes out September 1st. So.
All right, excellent. We'll look forward to it. Adrian, how about you? What's next on the docket for you?
I have another book coming out through PM Press in 2022 it's an anthology about how queer activists responded to COVID, and specifically through resiliency and what our activism looked like during this really challenging moment in our lives. I also have 2 book chapters and other books coming out. They are both about LGBTQ health issues.
Excellent, great. Dani.
I'm working on a middle grade novel about 2 enemies who end up working together to help save a dog that's being neglected on their street. And it's really about how at that age, like that between you're not fully a teenager yet, but you're not a kid anymore, that feeling of powerlessness. Like it's set in the country in Nova Scotia, where I'm originally from. And like, you can't drive, so you barely can do anything. And it's about trying to reclaim some of that power and to help someone else who's powerless.
Excellent, great, thank you. Missouri, what's next for you?
I am doing a story, well, since I live in California and in an area which has experienced a lot of wildfires in the last few years, my next book is about a wildland firefighter. And the title is called Slow Burn.
Nice. And Aurora, what are we expecting from you next?
Sure. I have a novella coming out in June in a collection with Angie Williams and Megan O'Brien. It's a series of butch femme novellas. The 2 books that I wrote with Jamie Clevenger will be out in November, which has been a really fun sort of shared universe, but also parallel timeline, which neither of us had ever done before. So that's an adventure. And then I'm working on a book called Greener Pastures, which is a city girl who finds herself managing a sort of hobby farm, and the cider maker next door, who she can't decide if it's her saving grace or the bane of her existence.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you everyone so very much for participating and for sharing your work from your shortlisted books. Congratulations on being a finalist. Good luck. Thank you to our audience, everybody, for coming and listening. I hope that we'll see a lot of you at the awards ceremony, at the whole conference, quite frankly. You can go to our website, goldencrown.org, and just click on the big red conference in the middle of the page, and you can learn all there is to know about our conference, register, all that kind of stuff. So again, thank you very much, everybody. Have a great Saturday. Yay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Sign up for the conference. I'm so excited this year. Seriously, do it. It's great panels.
Kelly said, so now you all must.
Yeah. Now you know.
Okay. Have a great day, everyone. We're going to
Great
sign
to see everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.